Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Alexandria. Today I am going to be answering all of your questions, build related, personal, any questions that you guys sent me over the past week. Thank you so much for participating. If you missed it and you can't tell, my voice is still a little bit raspy. I unfortunately posted my video a week and a half ago, I think it was at this point, and immediately got sick. I'm really sorry for the delay in the build series, but again, I was sick and just trying to take better care of my health, which is something honestly that's kind of foreign to me, something that I am trying to be better about doing. So I appreciate all of you understanding, and I'm so happy to be sitting down with you all again today. Before we get into the more specific questions though, I just want to address something that I still get questions about on every single video that I post, understandably, and that is why I sold my van. I spent all of last year building out a 2020 Ford Transit. The van was perfect for me in that it fit all of my gear. I built it to my needs. It had all the power in the world that I could ever want, but it was not perfect for me in that the payment on that van was $680 a month. Now, you might be wondering, well, if you had such a high payment, why would you buy that in the first place? When I bought my van, I was working a pretty well-paying, definitely like well above average paying job in the Bay Area. I valued stealth, I valued convenience, I valued parkability, like being able to just park in a downtown area without too much hassle, and that price was nothing in that it was less than a third of what I had been previously paying for rent. Fast forward 2 years and we are still in a pandemic. I now have a dog, I now have 2 businesses of my own, and I am transitioning out of that high-paying Bay Area city job. And when I was looking at the costs and I knew that I was leaving my job, in addition to the van market that has been sky high, if you know anything about van prices right now, it made sense for me to sell. I wiped out my debt, which is something that I have been trying to do for years now. I have a much healthier savings and emergency savings now that I will be able to tap into if I ever have to do repairs, let's say, if this breaks down because it is a used vehicle, if I wanted to upgrade. And it also gave me a build budget. And so everything that you see here behind me, this like 3/4 built bus, that all came from the money, mostly at least, that I just made selling my van. Now I don't have a payment. I'm completely debt free. There's more space for me in Terra, and I don't need to be as stealth as I used to be. Anyways, that's that. I just wanted to address that off the top because I know a lot of you still had that question. Alright, so now I'm going to be on my phone a little bit answering all of your questions from the community tab and then also from Instagram towards the end. If I don't get to your comment for some reason or if I missed it, let me know down below and I'm happy to write out a response, but I think I did get everyone. So Olbird on Instagram asks, the how, what, when, and why of your nonprofit would be super interesting, and congrats on 10,000 subs. The how, when, why of my nonprofit. So if you guys didn't know, in October of 2021, I founded a nonprofit, Herterra. Now, the how, I really am learning as I'm going. There's no specific way that I'm going about this other than trying to learn as much as I can and take in all the information that I can. There's a lot more that goes into it on the back end, the admin side of things, than just a small business, especially when it comes to like tax forms, tax paperwork, setting up a board, which is something that's very foreign and new to me, and then also just the day-to-day, making sure that we are staying in compliance with not only our mission statement, but with the law. I run this nonprofit year-round. We are going through a little bit of a restructuring right now, just in terms of how often we host trips, because I am the only guide at this point, and I want to make sure that this is something that is sustainable and that I continue to enjoy. My enjoyment allows me to show up, allows me to be positive, and to give back to the community. And the why is simply that I grew up very privileged to get to enjoy outdoor spaces. My parents took me camping from a very young age and taught me the value of nature and time spent outside. I saw the very positive impact that the outdoors had on myself, both physically and mentally, and just appreciated how much the outdoors gave me. I don't know, like I went from feeling really, really grateful to feeling upset that other people weren't getting to experience this because of financial barriers, because of barriers when it comes to knowing the skills or having community to teach them how to safely recreate in the outdoors. And then also people who are seeking community, which I think we all are. Our mission is directly just to empower women and non-binary people in outdoor spaces with the tools, community, and skills to thrive outdoors. So that is what I'm hoping to do. If you guys want to check out my nonprofit, I always have it linked in the description down below, and then also in the channel art on my page, and I would love it if you checked it out. And if you felt like it, join a trip. We are going up to Oregon in June, which I'm really excited about, and we still have 4 spots available. So if that sounds like something that would be interesting to you, we try to offer low cost and scholarship options as well if you're unable to afford the trip, and we would love to have you out there. All right, Ian for Caron, I apologize if I got that wrong. When you get on the road, do you plan to meet up with other van life creators? Yes, I do. That is something that I've actually already been doing. Last year, I went to a couple of meetups, but also just met people who I'd interacted with on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and that's how I've made the majority of my van school bus friends, is through like online means. All right, Netta Word 1. Hope you feel well soon. Thank you. As to your new build, what are things you feel the need to add or remove from this build compared to your last one, and why? That is a great question because there are a lot of things that I've changed in this build compared to my first one. In my last build, I had cabinets that went on the entire top perimeter of my build, whereas this one, I am trying to have none of that. I don't want any upper cabinets or shelves because this bus is only 6 feet tall. And I really want to preserve as much height and like open space as possible up top, so that way it just feels more open. How many times can I say open? In addition to that, I'm giving myself a much larger workspace because I found that in the last van, I did have a desk area, but it was kind of obnoxious to use. My seat was really high and I had to kind of like lay back a little bit, like it was a couch, because it was up on top of my fridge. So my feet couldn't touch the ground. It wasn't very ergonomic, and my head was like butting up against those upper cabinets I was just talking about. So here I will have a dedicated work and dining space that should fit 2 to 4 people depending on how like broad we are. And I'm really excited about that because I think that it will allow me to be more intentional about my work time and my meal time. I got a much bigger sink because doing dishes and like washing my face at night were my 2 biggest complaints, I think, about my last build. I had a small like farmhouse style sink that was really cute, but just not very practical. When I had to wash pots and pans, it took up the entire sink because it was only 13 by 13, I believe. The sink that I got for this bus is 18 by 22, which might seem overkill, but I am somebody who loves to host, as I've said in past videos, and so it's very important to me to have a functional kitchen space. On that note, I also added a propane oven and cooktop, which I'm so excited about because I think it's going to make it much easier for me to get excited about creating new meals, eating well, which I'm trying to really focus on this year, and taking better care of myself. Frank Metz asks, one question I have you thought about buying a good used Class C motorhome instead of building one from scratch? I was looking into a variety of rigs. That includes motorhomes, Ford Econolines. I even thought about doing like a Subaru with a tow behind trailer, either for like living space like an A-liner or storage for that, and then building out the Subaru instead. And the biggest reason why I did not go with the Class C motorhome, well, 2 reasons why. One, my gear is like the center of both builds that I've done. Now, I know you can put like bikes on the outside, and a lot of Class C's have storage that goes like underneath the back bed area. I just wasn't finding an option that I felt good about. I prefer to not have any of my gear, bike, skis, snowboard, any of that on the outside, simply because I don't want to draw attention to myself and I don't want to make myself a target. And then also storing gear outside, just like a bike on a bike rack, is really hard on your gear, and I don't have the money to replace things like my mountain bike, and so I want to take good care of it And part of that is keeping it out of the elements and inside. But that, in combination with the fact that I would be much more limited on where I can park and what like trails I can get to, for example, in a motorhome, or what trailheads I can park at, because if you've ever been to a trailhead, a lot of them are very small. I just did not feel like it was a good option for me. Deborah Griffith asks, do you plan to travel all over the country or are you staying in your area? Will these ridiculous gas prices influence where you go? I know we will be traveling less. So it's a great question, and it's one that I battle with every day. This time around, having a used vehicle with miles on it, I have 126 on this now, in addition to gas prices, has me really planning out my travel in a much more intentional way. In addition to leaving my job, I am starting to take on more Herterra trips, my nonprofit, but I'm trying to plan that with the weather and with events that I already have planned, so I'm not jumping across the country constantly. But while I am trying to be intentional about it, I won't be able to just stop traveling because, again, my work does require me to be in different places, leading trips pretty frequently, at least every month or every other month. I want to travel slower. I don't want to put 35,000 miles on this bus like I did my van if possible, and I'm hoping that that will help to mitigate gas costs. Off-Grid Homestead LWI asks, I'd be interested to know why you picked van life over RV or tiny house. So I'm answering this one a little bit differently than my last one that asked about the Class C. All of that is still true, but you also asked about a tiny house, and so I'm not sure yet if this is happening, but it is a goal of mine eventually to have a small piece of property somewhere and what most would probably consider a tiny house, but I'm not ready for that yet, and so that'll probably be phase 3 of my more nomadic living. My goal really is to be saving as much money as I can right now in hopes of purchasing land, purchasing a small home, or something along those lines in the next couple of years. I don't think that I'll be ready to stop traveling in the next 3 to 5 years. Maybe. Who knows what the future holds. But I at least would like a home base where I could either keep like off-season gear and use as a check-in point and maybe rent out the other part of the year when I'm not home, or to have just like a little piece of land where I could spend maybe part of the year and then spend the other part of the year traveling in fair weather. So that is coming. I'm super excited for it, but it is a little ways off. All right, Nedaward asks, what keeps you wanting to live the van schoolie life? What are the drawbacks for you and what are the benefits? I don't want to seem too rosy and cheery about this, but for me personally, there are very few drawbacks. I think the only one would be that I'm 25 and I, at some point, would love to have a family, have a partner, and have a more like centralized community. That's not something that I'm worried about right now or focused on, but I think if that's something that you are trying to actively do, dating on the road is super hard. Finding community that you can like live and work and play around all year round is also really hard because many of us are in transit. We cross paths, but we don't really hang out with each other that much. And so you really have to be good at like being with yourself. I feel like I've honed that skill pretty well and I'm really comfortable now and really value my time alone. And then those times with friends and with community are even more special. But that might be a concern for you if you're somebody who values having their community close to them at all times. The benefits, on the other hand, I've talked about a few already today. One of them for me personally is financial. In my past life, we'll call it, when I was living in the big city, working the big job, pretty much right out of college, I had, gosh, if I think back, I think my fixed bills were almost $3,500 a month. And that's like insurance. I had a car payment at that time. I had my monthly rent payment, my utilities. That's not including gas or food or anything. So you look at $3,500 a month and compare that now to, I think I'm right around $300 a month, maybe $350. So literally a tenth of the cost. And that would be my car insurance, my phone bill, my health insurance. And again, not including gas and other flexible costs. But financial is a big one. Two, I'm somebody who has always valued travel. I was that little kid with the map up in her room who wanted to see the world and experience all the things that the world has to offer. And so I really value my ability and the flexibility to travel all the time, and to see places that I otherwise would not have if I was just working that little job in my little apartment. All right, Michael S. says, I'm intrigued with the electrical aspect of the build. What is the power source and how do you know how to place the wiring? I assume some of the wires are for lighting, but then some are for the fridge, oven, and the heater. Yes, those are all correct. Your assumptions are correct. I have two power sources. One is the solar on my roof. I have 400 watts. Yep, 400 watts of solar. In my old build, I had 550, so a bit smaller of a system. And then I also have alternator charging. So when I'm driving, my battery basically like flips the breaker, and it allows my house batteries in the back of the bus that run the bus to be charged off of the engine battery. And that makes sure that I stayed topped off. It also really helps in winter months when there's not as much sun or not as much like overhead sun, because the ability for your panels to charge your system definitely differs depending on the angle of the sun and the time of the year. And then it also allows for just more consistent, faster power. It takes a lot longer for your batteries to charge off of solar, unfortunately, than it does off the alternator. So it's a backup system, really. I should not need as much power as I have. I have 400 amp hours of lithium in the back, and I really don't have much of a draw on the inside of the bus. In my last build, I had 300 amp hours, and that was almost always adequate unless I was running my electric heater and my electric blanket when it was like 5 degrees in Mammoth this winter. And I don't plan on doing that now because I got a little diesel heater, which is really exciting. So yeah, I shouldn't be running my batteries out very often. My power draws are small. I have a fridge, I have a water pump, I have some lights that are LED up in the ceiling. I have an oven, just like the electric start. But really, like, that's all the power that I have, in addition to obviously charging my phone, my computer, and my camera. So yeah, really low draw. That's how things are powered. I have wires that run from those lithium batteries in the garage out around in my system and allow me to use all of my appliances. Paul Sherman asks, what do you plan to do to earn money while traveling since you already quit your job? I did quit my job, or I gave notice and said I will go part-time and then help train the new person. But like, let's go, let's get this moving, back in March. It is now almost June? No, okay, it's the end of May. We'll give them some credit. It's been 2 months though this week since I gave my notice, gave my like, hey guys, like, I'm leaving, please, you know, kind of figure stuff out and I will help you, but like, I'm not gonna be here forever. I'm still at that job, which is also, I think part of the reason why I got so sick last week was because I am burning the candle at both ends, you guys. I have 3 jobs right now, a puppy and a bus build. So in terms of what I'm doing for income, I just alluded to the fact that I have 2 other jobs, my nonprofit and now content creation. So thanks guys for being here because y'all are supporting me in my life. Savings from my van build. I do still have a small, well, a normal income actually from that high paying job I was saying. So there's 2 sources. I now make money off of YouTube and social media. And then my nonprofit is profitable as an organization, but I am not pulling any salary from it. So it's not a source of income right now, but I do anticipate in the next year or so for that to become profitable to a point where the board might feel comfortable on voting for a small, reasonable salary for myself. Those are going to be, I guess, the 2 main sources of income that I have. Content and my nonprofits. And obviously with content creation, there's a million things that go into that. I make some money off of YouTube, Instagram. I make money on TikTok occasionally through like brand and sponsored posts. And then I'm also, planning on starting a Patreon in the next couple of months to connect with all of you a little bit more deeply and provide you with some more behind the scenes and fun content. Caroline Morgan asks, you've probably already said, but I am new here. How old are you and when did you leave home? Funny you should ask. I am 25 and I'm currently sitting in my parents' driveway. So I left home for the first time when I was 17. I moved to British Columbia, Canada, and was living in Vancouver for a brief spell because I was going to school there. Fast forward a couple of months, unfortunately it did not work out because my financial aid was not showing up, and I could not afford school out of pocket. I had to take loans out. And so what I ended up doing was coming back home, moved back in with my parents, and did community college from 18 until, gosh, I think I was 20 years old. 21 to 22 and a half, 23. I turned 23 like the month I graduated. I went to university at University of California, Davis, so just a little bit north of where my parents live and where I grew up. And so I was living on my own then as well, before coming back to the area that I grew up in, and I lived with a partner for a bit. From 23 to 25, which is where I'm at now, I've lived on and off with my parents at different periods, but in total, I think that I've lived on my own for probably 4 years, like on and off over the period. And now I've been living at home with my parents while I'm doing this build because gratefully they have tools and a driveway for me to work in. And honestly, if I didn't have that support and the ability to work from their house to do this, I would not have been making any progress on this build, nor would I probably have even felt like I could take on a build of this size, or my van build, which I also built out of their driveway last year. All right, this is a fun one. Slaphead asks, 1 question, 3 answers. Who's telling the truth, Johnny Depp or Amber Heard? 1, Johnny Depp. 2, Amber Heard. Heard? I don't know how to pronounce her name. And then 3, they both deserve a slap from Will Smith. I think Johnny Depp is telling the truth, but I also think there's probably truth to both sides. And so I don't think either of them are like lying completely or outright. I will say though, like, evidence is mounting against Amber, and it feels like she's really like messed up or slipped up a couple of times and said things that she probably shouldn't have said, that lead me to think that there's more truth in Johnny's story. So I'm gonna go with Johnny. I think Johnny is telling the truth just based on the choices that you gave. Frankie Frame asks, what will your first destination be? Canada? That is definitely high on the list. I will not be going to Canada this year, but I'm thinking maybe next summer at some point. I would love to go up to Canada, and I would also love to go to Alaska in the future. I don't know that it'll be in this bus. That might be a rig number 3 trip, just because getting stuck on the Alcan in a bus without phone service sounds miserable. And my first destination is going to be Oregon. Well, I guess my first destination was Colorado. I was just in Colorado, but I will be headed up to Oregon and then spending time in the Pacific Northwest, and then Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming this summer. Marias82 asks, what inspired you to build your tiny home and constantly travel? Well, I talked about a little bit of this already, just in regards to like the financial benefits, my desire to travel, but I think that the thing that inspired me, I'm gonna give my parents credit here because they were the parents, thank you Mom and Dad, who told me when I was a kid that I could do and be anything that I wanted. And I'm super grateful to have been given that perspective early on and to also have believed it. Good job, little me. But I always, I guess, just dreamed of travel. I was a big reader when I was little. I read everything from fiction and fantasy to biographies and autobiographies and nonfiction, and learned a lot about the world in that way, just from the safety of my book, but it also really inspired me to go and see what was out in the world. I traveled for the first time abroad when I was 17. I had been to Mexico for a short trip and to Canada when I was young, like 5 years old, I think, but I'd never really traveled internationally before then. And when I was 17 or 18, I'm trying to remember, it was like 2015, so I was like 18 turning 19, I went abroad and I spent 10 weeks going all across Europe. I was in the UK, I was in Ireland, I was in Croatia and Norway, and saw so many different corners of the EU that I was just so stunned by. These were things that I had never even dreamed of, I'd never had exposure to, and that really solidified, like, yes, I want to travel, I want to see more, I want to learn more, I want to meet more people. And so I continued to try to travel as often as I could on my college kid budget. When I was younger, I did a lot of budget trips. I would stay with friends and family, people that I had met on my travels. I would like go and stay with them at their home when they got back. That's how I saw Germany. That's how I saw the UK. It's really just one of the biggest things that enabled me to travel for such a low cost. And then the following year, I also went down to Indonesia, where I spent time in Bali, Lombok. I went to Nusa Lembongan, the Gili Trawangan Islands, and I just, again, fell in love with travel and people and culture, and I knew that I didn't want to stop at that point. I did have to take a couple of years off because I got like into some intense university studies and I didn't have any money left. So I took time off, and then when I graduated and got into the 9-to-5 world, I felt like I was dying. To be completely honest, I just felt suffocated. I thought there's more to life than this, and I was making good money, but I was never happy. Like, money was not making me happy. I didn't care about the big income. I didn't care about going up the ladder. And so that was when I realized I wanted to make a shift, and I decided that it was more important to me to live simply, to make less money or no money, and to experience things than it was for me to go purchase things. So it's also a big part of the reason why I sold my van, was because it was a lot of money, it was worth a lot of money, and it was more than I needed. I knew that I could travel and survive out of a backpack. And so just having a vehicle to my name and being able to travel in this way was already luxurious in and of itself. And I didn't need all of the accoutrement to like feel good about my travel or to enjoy it. Long-winded, but that is what inspired me. Parkin's mama asks, where were you born? I was born in California, in a town called San Jose, and then I grew up in the Santa Cruz mountain area. Dale Hub Bard asks, what's your number one advice for traveling with a pupper? I love traveling with Tara. It's very different than traveling alone, so I would say if you haven't done it yet, definitely think long and hard about the things that you might have to give up. If you're traveling in the US, like national parks are really inaccessible for dogs, in addition to just things take longer when you have a dog and you have to prepare for that extra time. But that said, it is so worth it. And if you already have a dog, I highly recommend that you travel with them. It's so rewarding. It's so fun to see them enjoy new places and experience new sights and smells. But I think my number one piece of advice would be really to know and train your dog. Tara and I are still working on this. We have a lot of training ahead of us, but I think the biggest issue that I've seen with having a dog on the road is when they are not either socialized or trained. And I'm not talking about reactive dogs, like that is a thing in and of itself, dogs who have trauma or who have had terrible things happen to them that they're recovering from and are reactive because of that. But I'm really talking about the people who don't train their dogs, who let them run off leash, who don't really care or aren't considerate about other people's experience. That can really, really ruin your experience and everyone around you. Yeah, training is the biggest one, and then also just respect the local regulations and guidelines of the places you're going to. If dogs have to be on leash, have your dog on a leash. If, you know, you're out somewhere and your dog poops on the ground, pick it up, please. Yeah, I think it's just kind of common sense stuff, but it's something that I feel like people don't really think about as much as they should have. Dia asks, what do you do to earn income on the road? I did touch on this already, a couple different streams of income, but thank you for the question. Chronically Kelsey, what was the process like discovering your business? It looks amazing. Thank you. So I talked about the who, what, when, where, and why, but I came up with the idea for my business last summer when I was in Aspen, Colorado. I was on a solo hike, feeling really grateful, feeling really privileged, like, wow, I'm so lucky to get to do this and to feel confident in nature. And that confidence, privilege, gratitude shifted to, oh my gosh, everybody should get to experience this. Nature and the outdoors are for everyone. So that was the thought that really started it all. And from there, it was just a matter of discovering how I wanted to do that and for what groups of people I wanted to do that for. All right, another one from Kelsey. What has been your favorite lesson in bus van life so far? This is one that I'm still learning, actually, but it is, I think, something that is going to ultimately be the most important lesson that I learn, and that is to slow down. I had my new van last year, which allowed me to travel really quickly. I got to zip all over the country in a new van with a warranty, and like everything was good. I never had a concern in the world. And now I have this big honking bus that yesterday did 45 miles an hour on the highway because of the wind. And I had to just take a deep breath and say, this is a part of the experience. This is a part of it. I think in addition to that, I have really learned through starting my business, through quitting my job, that I'm someone who is very all or nothing. I take on the world. I do 3 jobs, a bus build, and a puppy all at once. And that's fine for like a sprint for a short while. But doing that or doing anything like that for prolonged periods of time can be very damaging to your health, or it has been to mine. I don't take care of myself like I used to. I don't exercise like I used to. I just haven't been taking as good of care of myself. And as a result of that, I think, again, it's a big part of the reason why I got so sick. And so I'm learning how to slow down. As I said, this is a work in progress lesson, but I'm learning how important it is to slow down, to take my time, and to enjoy the sights and the smells along the way. All right, AZYXWB. What are some dog-friendly trails you recommend in Oregon? How can I find them? Well, I am not from Oregon, and I don't particularly have like a list of trails in Oregon that I can recommend off the top of my head. But I will say that when I've searched for them, many trails in Oregon have been dog friendly as long as they're on leash. And one of my favorite resources to find this information is AllTrails. I have the pro subscription, which I think it's $10 a month or something like that. That's actually through my organization, so it's a business expense, which makes it a little bit easier. But AllTrails is incredible. They almost always, if not always, list which trails are dog friendly, and there's even a filter that you can apply at the top to see which trails are dog friendly. And I don't know if you need a subscription to view that information. It might be publicly available, so before you pay for it, definitely just sign up for their free membership and see if you're able to find that. If not, and if money is a barrier, I would highly recommend Hiking Project, which usually says at the bottom, but it's not quite as like frequent that I will see this. It says hiking with dogs is allowed or recommended or not recommended. So Hiking Project is an app, and I think it's a website, and AllTrails are my 2 most recommended sites for hiking with your dog. All right, everyone, those are all the questions that I received today. Thank you all so much for participating, for joining the conversation, and for asking some fun questions. I really enjoyed sitting down with you all today, and again, apologize that it took so long to get around to this. I'm feeling much better, and I'm hoping that next week will be the 5th installment of the Bus Build series. I'm trying to leave for Oregon in about 2.5 weeks. And so about a week and a half left of the build, and then the rest of the time will be spent packing and prepping for my trip. This is likely going to be the last time that I'm in California for probably a couple of months. I don't really have a plan to return in the near future, so I'm just trying to enjoy my time here and then the road trip up north. So if you guys want to see that or the rest of my bus build journey, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, and I will see you guys all next Sunday.